Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Loom Plotters. Martin, how are you?
Loom plotting away. We're back once again. And we have an interesting topic for you today. We talked about watch icons in the past, and this kind of never left our mind, right? We felt it was not fully finished. So we wanted to talk about the polar opposite of icons, which is moving forward.
Yes.
New, revolutionizing, watch designs. What is left out there for us to, expect in the future? What can we get watch companies? What can watch companies make that are truly revolutionary new designs?
Revolutionary. That's always a bit of a pet peeve of mine when
Yes.
every new startup comes out and we are revolutionizing the industry with our new product, and you think, right. That
If you have
doesn't
to say
happen.
revolutionize, it's not revolutionary.
That doesn't happen that often. Right? Something is really
But first,
revolutionary.
what's on your wrist?
On my wrist today is the revolutionary Hanhart SK60. As you can, I'm showing it to Martin at the moment. It's a black PVD coated steel watch with a GMT movement. It's a pilot's watch, 40 millimeters only, relatively small. We're smaller than that because of the big dial. And it has this yellow second hand and the yellow GMT hand, which I like a lot. And on the dial, they have this little longitude and latitude printed on it, which is the Hanhart headquarter in Germany.
Very cool.
Yeah, I looked it up. That's the information there. I think Ulysse Nardin has done that before with some of their watches, where they had the longitude and latitude on it printed.
Totally irrelevant to this, but speaking of things printed on the dial, did you see the new Hodinkee Hublot release?
I did, and I like it.
I think it's cool.
I like
so
it.
for those of you that don't know, they did a special limited edition that apparently says not for resale on the dial. And apparently this goes beyond what I knew. So apparently Hublot has had service watches in the past. So while your watch was in service, they would give you a loaner watch. And the loaner watches on the dial, they said not for sale.
Right. Because
and hence Hodinkee's modification of this, not for resale, right? Because of the big flipper culture in today's environment.
No, I think this is a very nice tongue-in-cheek, satire play on what happens at the moment. It's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, it is. I like it. And only 100 pieces.
Oh, I think I'm sure they will sell out quickly.
They haven't sold out yet.
Is it? Oh, really?
I checked it yesterday and it wasn't sold out yet.
What's the price?
I don't know, but now it's been more than 24. It was $7,500 US, I think.
Okay.
I mean, it's not cheap, but it's not supremely expensive either.
See, I'm not. I mean, look, there's a common.
Yeah, it's sold out. It's sold out now. 7,900 US. Yeah. And they do say, by the way, in their thing that this is a Hublot took note from the auto service industry and began providing a plastic quartz-powered watch to its customers to keep their wrist company while their own watch was in the shop, much like getting a loaner car from the dealership. And apparently there's a line of text reading not for sale on the dial. And this was the inspiration for this, not for resale.
What a brilliant idea to give you a replacement watch, right? I mean,
but who else did this, right?
So who did this?
Who else did this? Bamford.
Oh, yeah.
The G-Shock that you had, the square G, the Bamford G, was the original loaner watch. Oh. And it was so popular that they would then, they were requested, or whoever said, why don't you sell these? And of course, that's where Bamford came and they started selling G-Shocks as well, or collaborating with G-Shock.
Nice. Anyhow, so since I said my Hanhart here, which I like, I have put it on a kudu leather strap. It's not the one from Moser, but it's another brown kudu leather strap, which I like because I've just been into Africa, as mentioned in the last episode. So,
what is a kudu?
Kudu is an antelope. It's a very sweet antelope.
Right.
I like kudus. Kudus are very cool. I must admit, I ate kudu when I was there. It was one of the meals that we had was kudu, and it tastes really, really nice, like venison. A very, very nice material, and it has a bit of this because it's not farmed. I mean, it's also not endangered, so there are plenty of kudus, but that means that the leather has a lot of these little imperfections on it, like little scratches from the bushes or mosquito bites and all of these little things.
Exactly, yeah.
It's really a very nice material and extremely soft. It's just so subtle and supple, not subtle, supple. It's amazing to wear. It
is nice. Pretty subtle as well.
So what are you wearing? Anyways.
I'm wearing my Cartier Santos medium-sized on the bracelet. I realized today that I'm an absolute idiot. This was actually yesterday. Sorry. Fun story. As you may know, the Cartier Santos, the current generation Cartier Santos, have these. I'm clicking it back on my wrist. ASMR for the clicks. They have these bracelet links that you could size yourself at home, right? With the push of a finger, I can remove a link, I can add a link, I can do whatever I want.
Which is amazing.
And it's revolutionary.
That is truly revolutionary if it comes to watch bracelets. Absolutely.
So I was sitting on the couch playing with it. And one of the things is I've had this watch for, I don't know how long now, probably 6 months, 3 months, 4 months, something around. I don't know when I got it. I think I got it in April.
So not that much.
Coming up on half a year. Well, here's the thing. I was always a little upset that the clasp did not sit center on my wrist.
Right.
And I just expected, okay, that's fine. That's how it's going to be. And for some reason, it never crossed my mind, because the sizing was perfect, right? Mm-hmm. But it never crossed my mind to take one link from the 6 o'clock and put it on the 12 o'clock. I did that. And now the bracelet, it's perfectly centered in the middle of the clasp. And I'm like, I sat here for 4 months with this watch, looking at this off-center clasp saying, I can't do anything about it.
Oh.
And it never occurred to me to move a link from one side to the other.
See, that's it.
So it's the stupidity of that.
Inexcusable.
And the fact is, I didn't have to go anywhere.
As a proper Lume plotter, that's it. You're fired.
It is. I should be. The reason I thought about this is because I went to Rolex. I had a link removed from my Datejust. My Datejust doesn't have any micro adjust. So then the Jubilee links are smaller than an Oyster link. So you can kind of, put one in, take one out kind of deal. So I went to the Rolex service center and I said, can you please take one out? So he took one out and I looked at the clasp and it was weird. I was like, okay, can we take one more and put it on the other side? And the guy did that for me. And then this clasp was perfect.
Yeah.
So I come home and it never crossed my mind to do the same. So for when I go to Rolex or wherever, this always is something that I generally do. I try to balance the links so that the clasp is perfect, right?
Yeah.
So on
Yeah. And sorry, I want to say that this is the secret is that it's centered to your wrist and how you wear your watch, because that doesn't necessarily mean it is centered when you have the watch off your wrist. It has to. No,
and this is the thing. Exactly. They always center it. They show you it's center. I'm like, that doesn't matter.
Yes.
So the guy showed me that it was perfectly balanced. And I said, no.
Yeah. Exactly.
So for me, I've noticed my 6 o'clock is generally much, much shorter than my 12 o'clock.
For me,
but not by like one link. It's by like 2 links. So on my Explorer, which are the big Oyster links, I'm 4 and 6.
Okay.
4 on 6 o'clock side, 6 on the other one. So
but it's a long clasp as well, right? In the new Rolex watches.
It is a long clasp, correct. But on my sub, for instance, I'm 5 and 4.
Right.
And so it all depends on what watch it is. So why I didn't do it on this, because this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on one side and 12 on the other.
Wow.
So originally it ships with 12 and 12. I have 2 links removed, but I had them removed from one on each side. And that sounded logical at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
but of course,
see, this is the thing. I mean, sometimes you have these issues with the half links, and some bracelets have half links, some don't. Some have the micro adjust where you can just move things around a bit. But I figured out the same thing, and it was for me absolutely a revolutionary revelation.
Yeah, that's the word of the day.
A lot of revving here, revolutionary revelation, and it's that I also have to have a shorter 6 o'clock bracelet, and then it works, and then it works fine for me. But that's definitely the same thing that you have. My wrist is not perfectly balanced like a bracelet.
No, I have to exactly,
because my watch also starts to move up, right, to the 12 o'clock. It just moves up when I wear it sometimes. If I don't have the 6 o'clock shorter, it just looks odd on my wrist. And then, anyhow. Good. So you changed that. Did you change that? And how long did it take you to change that with your fingernail? Chuck.
I will. Boom, boom, boom.
Oh my God! Live demonstration.
Live demonstration. I'll try to get it in. I don't know if you can hear the clicking.
Click.
No, it's too
that was
quiet.
A small click. Yeah.
But boom, it's already open.
That's so
easy. If I want to remove a link, I'll press one more, and now this link is out.
This is. I
want to put it back in, and this one does have a little click here. Oh, I shouldn't put. So I'll try to get it towards the microphone, because when you do press it in, there is a little auditory click.
Yeah.
So no, it's quiet. It's rather quiet, but it is a.
You can feel and hear it when you're on it. Yeah.
It is a fidgety thing. This is a very cool fidget spinner.
I can't believe that that they have managed to actually have this, release it, and it's out in the wild, and it's working.
And no one else does it. What is wrong with people? Like, how can you not?
It's like no. When I first had an overseas on my wrist, and I've seen the bracelet with a small micro adjustment left and right on the butterfly clasp that you can pull it out by 2 or 3 millimeters on each side, and I thought, oh my God, that is genius! You have a butterfly clasp with a micro adjust, more or less. Right?
Yeah,
you can pull out one side or both sides. It is basically half a centimeter if you combine the two.
And this is one of the things that I don't like about this bracelet is there is no micro adjust, which to do something so ridiculous, by the way, guys, in that 2 seconds, I literally removed a link.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, I was just seeing it with my own eyes, how Martin did it.
Exactly. But that's kind of what I'm saying is, why wouldn't they have also put a micro adjust?
Good question.
Some people do say
maybe that
they keep a link in their wallet.
Oh,
and that's their micro adjust. So they say, we'll keep a link with us, and then if I need to, I put it in. If I don't need it, I take it out.
If you can change it so quickly, yeah. Actually, it's not a
but then you still have to carry something around with you.
Yeah, that's true.
I much prefer the Rolex version.
Yes. That's true.
Let's talk about our topic for today.
First, I need to thank a few people, because before we talk about this, I want to thank our listeners in Poland, in the UK, in Denmark, in Spain.
Who is listening from Poland?
And in Switzerland. Switzerland, very important market. And of course in Sweden. So we have listeners there, and our podcast statistics tell us that we have quite a few listeners there, and that's great. And we are in the top 50 in some places, which is amazing in the hobbies category. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We really, really appreciate that you like to listen to what we have to say, which we sometimes can't believe that people actually want to listen.
I mean, ultimately, we're doing this for ourselves, I guess, because these are conversations that we have had not recorded. So we thought, why not just record it?
Yeah.
Maybe somebody else's. But once again, by the way, I've been wondering, we've been number 1 in Poland in the hobbies category before, right? On the daily statistics.
Yes, for one day.
Who is listening from Poland? Please message me on Instagram. I will give you a direct shout out. Who is listening from Poland? At Lume Plotters on Instagram. Send me a message.
Yes. And of course, in the UAE, we generally manage to be in the top 5, especially.
Yeah, we're usually like second to a BBC gardening show.
We are going places.
No overlap in listenership, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry. Now, please. What are we talking about today? We are talking about.
All right. So today the idea is, we talked about icons in a previous episode, and we said we kind of cut it short because, of course, we didn't want to make it a ridiculously long podcast. But then the opposite of icons are these quote unquote revolutionary new designs that go against the icons. Right? It's against everything that we would have otherwise known. So the question here today is it possible for a watch company to make something that is truly radically new?
Okay.
Because in essence, a car is a car is a car, a watch is a watch is a watch. Can we do something new? And then also we want to get into what are the trends that we can anticipate or see in the future that watch companies could kind of go towards. Where is the watch world heading in terms of design?
Okay. Let me say one thing about that. I think in the last episode, I'm not so sure if that's, you quoted Stephen Pulverand, right?
Yes.
And you said that there's only three types of watches. There's
3 types of watches.
Historic ones.
Retrospective,
future-looking ones, and watches. Just normal.
And watches.
Everyday watches.
And he specifically said, by the way, and I love how he said, when you see a Submariner on someone's wrist, it doesn't matter if it's a 50-year-old Submariner or if it's a modern-day Submariner, you look at it and it's a Submariner.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with styling. It's a watch.
Yeah.
Right? If I see a Black Bay 58, we know that's a vintage-inspired watch, right? Especially if there's Fotina and other things like that tell us vintage-inspired. If we see something that's ridiculous, titanium, Octo Finissimo style, that's a futuristic watch, right? But neither of those two would we look at and just say, yeah, it's a watch, right? It's a future watch or a past watch.
Okay. Now,
so icons sit in this middle ground.
Yeah, I want to give you now, because I recently saw what I felt something that I've seen before, but in very recent times. And that is a bit of a design language, or not design language. It's a design like the Aventi watches. I don't know if you saw them recently.
Yes, the massive sapphire cases.
Diagonal sort of.
Pentagonal shape, I think it is. Then
you saw these MB&F, the one that has the dials on the side, like a bit.
Yes, yeah. Like for instance, the what is it called? The oh my goodness, the one that they just did, the Mad Reds, the Mad Red one or Mad One Red or whatever it's called.
I didn't mean this one. I meant one that has this sideways that looks like valves basically on the side, coming and showing the time on the side as well. But and there is another one that's I think from Jacob and Co, the Bugatti watch or something
Astronomia.
Like that. So there's a couple of these watches that have this trapezoidal design, and some of them showing the time on the side of the watch, so it's like a driver's watch, right? When you have the hands on the steering wheel,
you're right. What's it called? Was it who makes it? One of the very classic manufacturers makes one of these, and it's always funny to me. Girard-Perregaux, but there's a digital
the casquette, yeah.
Yes, which is to me the fact that Girard-Perregaux makes that is so weird, right? Yeah, because Hamilton also had one similar.
Yeah, and I think this is where you think, okay, this is a resurgence maybe of that design, or maybe it's a new design to a certain extent as well. It's innovation, but is it something that is? Yeah, is it something that it's? Is that just a watch, or is this the future-looking watch?
No, I think it's a weird watch, and there's a category in futuristic. That is weird. And once again, if we look at car design, there's always these weird things that will never become mainstream, right? So for instance, when I look at the Tesla Model X, the Falcon wing doors will never be regular production on every car, right? Because it's so weird.
But there are now that you can spec your car now without these doors, right?
The Model X's?
Yeah. I think.
I have no idea.
No, I recently saw a car and I thought like, well.
I haven't seen them in a while.
Why doesn't it have this Falcon wing doors? And I think this is now an option. So
Was it not a Model Y?
I don't know.
Which just looks like a smaller Model X.
Maybe I mixed that up.
Because I've mixed them up before. The Model X and the Y, they look very similar aside from scale, right? Yeah. But anyway, point of my story is when you look at these, I don't necessarily think that they're trying to be futuristic. I think that they're just trying to be weird. On the other hand, when we look at Richard Mills, they are very much pushing the boundaries of what future can hold for watches, right? With these ridiculous materials, carbon composite, and they look weird. They weigh 8 grams or however much. So it's yeah. They have some really weird stuff, and that is what I would categorize as futuristic.
Yeah, I agree. That is futuristic in a material sense, maybe also from a design sense, but I don't think like these watches that have that the display of time is different, because in the end a watch always has to show the time, or
and how you choose to do that is
somehow communicate the time. I mean, I think that's one of the Moser watches that had this black screen without any hands, right? The tourbillon without any hands.
The Alpine chiming watch.
It had the minute repeater, right? It was just
it was a
watch with a tourbillon.
If I'm not mistaken, was it the Alpine?
I don't know what it was called. Anyhow, but my point there is this is cool. It's
Alp.
innovative.
It was the Alp.
It's innovative.
It was called the Swiss Alp.
It's something that doesn't show the time, but it communicates the time as a minute repeater. But will it ever become iconic? Probably not. But is a new design, or is there anything that can be designed in something that you strap on your wrist that can truly be a surprise, that can truly be new, and not just for watch enthusiasts? I mean, we are saying like, oh my God, they changed the color on the bezel. It's revolutionary. It's new. I want it. Right?
Yeah.
but for normal people,
yes, absolutely.
Is that something where people will
I have
look at your wrist?
3 examples off the top of my head right now that have all changed the way we look at time.
Okay, go for it.
Number 1, the first one that I saw that did this was Resonance. Resonance has the sub-dial that tells you so it has a sub-dial within a big dial. Both of them rotate. And the hours are on one small register, and then the minutes are on the larger outer register, and they both turn around. That is not too far from what we are used to in terms of telling time, but it's still different. 2, HYT. HYT definitely changed the way we look at time because of their the liquid-filled tubes and their bellows that pump at a very specific rate. And then you can look at where the 2 liquids, there's basically a line, a demarcation between 2 colors, right? It's a clear and a blue, for instance, right? And wherever that is, there's a line or a gradient on the side that tells you, okay, that this is what time it is.
No,
based on where that liquid is.
That's the indication of, it's a different way of showing time.
And that's what I'm talking about, showing time.
But in the end, it's still a dial. And
it's still a dial.
Okay, the hand is replaced by, let's say, liquid, or it's rotating in general, like the new Hermes watches.
But it's still a new way of showing time, right?
The dial moving around. And a lot of these watches that don't photograph very well, because, I mean, they photograph well, but the problem is you don't see what happens over time, right? Like a resonance, if you show a resonance to somebody as a photo, you're like, okay, that's nice. But you have to actually set the time moving yourself, and because then you see how everything just moves around.
So they did put one on their website. They put a simulator on their website, and they allow you to drag the time, and it shows it how it spins and everything. So this was truly handy.
That's important, because otherwise you don't have an idea of what happens. Like I showed this new Hermes watch that was, I think, won a GPHG award or something to somebody, and he said like, well, that's boring. It's just a off-center subdial. I said, but the time subdial is actually moving around the dial. It's just not stationary. It actually moves. And shows some other indicator there. Which you can't see in a photo, obviously, right? So Anyhow, so you think these are
still traditional ways? to read time, so they're not new.
They're new designs for sure, right? And they play on how we actually show time. But there are other ways that you might find in a Met gallery or other places where time is being displayed differently, like in words, right? This big clock that just says 6:05, right? And it highlights different words on a big canvas, basically. So that's different. That's a different way of how to tell the time. Time is not new, obviously, and the time of the day is not new, but these are...
There's a movie about this, by the way, if you guys want to check it out. Another movie recommendation. Do you remember the name of the movie? I don't remember the name of the movie. Quickly, let me find it. There was a movie about basically the essence of time.
The essence of time.
Hold on. I'm trying to remember what the name of it was because it was not called The Essence of Time.
Okay.
The Keeper of Time.
The Keeper of Time.
The Keeper of Time, I believe it was made in cool partnership with Hodinkee. And it was about how time...
Yes.
Or what is time, essentially. What is time? So it was not about watchmaking. It was about telling of time.
See,
another good movie to recommend.
I think some of these watches that like show time differently, like you have a 24-hour dial, for example, where you see.
Oh yes, so
the hands go around.
For instance, Breitling had those in the Cosmonaut, and I always thought those were so cool.
I just feel like when I would change between watches and I had a watch with a 24-hour dial, I would probably have a challenge remembering that I'm looking at a 24-hour dial, and then just messing up my diary. But it's also a cool idea. Then you have these watches that show Mars time, right? Or I think Fortis has that, where they have a second hour hand that shows Mars time for their new.
Wasn't it Omega that released this?
They did this with the X33. Yes, exactly. They have also done that. So there's a couple of these.
The new X33 mission to Mars or whatever they call it.
Yeah, exactly. That's also a very, very nice watch. I really that's still on my list of watches that I really want. Is this is actually the
Speedmaster X33. Yeah. It is a very cool watch.
As far as quartz watches go,
let's pause for a second there.
Okay.
At the time of, I guess, even before, I would say the biggest change in the way we tell time was the difference between analog and digital.
I agree with that.
And that was a huge revolution, right? We can use the term revolutionary there. Absolutely, it was. But then we can also have mechanical ways to read analog time, and then we can have digital ways to read analog, or both ways, right? So we can have digital ways to read analog and analog ways to read digital.
And do you remember, I think the digital time displays didn't happen with LEDs or LCDs. They came before with these
in the 50s with the flipping
exactly
clocks.
Like when on the airports when you realize
the train stations, and they had the little flaps.
Yeah, when the characters flipped over. And you had these kind of alarm clocks on the bedside. A lot of people had them with this big digital display where this would just flap over.
So and this is one thing that I notice when I wear my digital watch, when I wear my G-Shock, for instance, is looking at an analog dial. It could be, of course, that I'm analog focused because I always wear analog watches. I look at it and you immediately glance down, and your brain does not register immediately what it says. You get a feeling. And I think we might have discussed this. So right now I look down. The first thing I notice, minute hand is around the 30. Yeah. And the second thing I notice is the hour hand was between 12 and 1. So it's around 12:30, right? Yeah. Around. But I glance at it, and then it takes me a second. And then, the computing occurs, and then you have an idea of what time it is now. And a lot of times I look at my minute hand, and I look at the minute hand, and I see the passage of time. Right? Yes. So if in 15 minutes I look down, okay, now it's at 45, makes sense. But at the same time, wearing a G-Shock, I do not get this feeling. It tells me 12:27. And I'm like, when is 27 again? It's before 30. So it's around halfway. But you don't get this half full, half empty, immediate sense that you would with an analog watch.
I think I totally agree with you. I think it also depends on what you grew up with, right? So if you started your journey with a digital watch and not with reading the time on a normal clock face, right? I mean, not just to learn how to read the time on a clock face, but just continue to actually use that as a clock during your formative years when you're young. Then I think you probably have a different relationship to it. But I totally agree with you. On a digital watch, you always have your mental little step and just imagine it on a watch face without actually actively doing it. It just happens in the background of your brain. And so just saying like, okay, half of an hour is gone, right? And you see this because of one circle, half of that is gone. And a quarter and 15 minutes or whatever, and these little brackets that we have divided our time in, these 5-minute slots, 15-minute slots, half an hour, 45 minutes, these kind of things. And the passing of time then has a different meaning if you look at a digital watch, I think as well. It's true.
Yeah, so you see 12:32 and then 10 minutes later you see 12:42. That it doesn't register. You see, okay, it's gone 10 minutes have passed, but it doesn't work the same way in my brain somehow. When I look at the minute hand passing, I have a sense of time passing.
Yeah, I think also when you said this once about pointer dates, you mentioned that earlier to me, and that still stayed with me, because you said that it's easier for you to understand of where we are in the month, right? Because you have this if you have a dial that goes once around in 31 days and you have the pointer date around it, and it shows you basically that, where the pointer date is on that dial, you already see the time going on, and you know that, the 17th or the 18th is way past halfway through the month. And then you have that more it's a bit more visual.
Especially if you get paid on the first. then it's really helpful. Yesterday, I was wearing my date just, and it said, okay, it's the 13th. Okay, so when do I get paid again? So it's like 10 days from now, right? And meanwhile, if you were to see this on a thing, you would always know when you got paid. So.
Yeah. Therefore, so I think as a time display, there's this analog way. I mean, also we could go back into this, why we have these 12 hours and 60 minutes and all of this stuff. But it's so ingrained.
Which the Keeper of Time goes into, by the way. The Keeper of Time movie goes into this. They start with, sundials, and how you can interpret these and things like this. So that was all actually before.
I in one of the African camps I've been in, they had a sundial installed, and that sundial was prepared by a sundial company for this specific lodge where we stayed in, and it had the sundial itself, which was pretty accurate, and a small display of the equation of time for that. And that we never actually talked about this, why the equation of time actually makes sense at a sundial, because that's where you actually have the issue that this time is off of our normal time, because the sundial shows you a different time. And seeing the equation of time, you can see, this watch will be 5 minutes fast at this.
So the equation of time, once again, is the demonstration that some days are longer than others, up to, I believe, 15 minutes plus minus.
A maximum.
So you have to keep this in mind when using a sundial.
And exactly. And the sundial, and it was very interesting. I put my watch next to it. Okay, it was 11 o'clock, and the sundial showed 11:05. And I thought, that makes sense when you look at the equation of time, saying like, at this time of the month, it should be about 5 to 6 minutes fast. And I thought, wow, brilliant, right? There you actually have the exact time on a sundial with the equation of time. But you have to know that there is a slight offset, right? Because otherwise you're saying like, well, the sun is a bit late today. No, it's not. It's just that
all right. So ultimately, I think we can agree that there's really, if somebody were to revolutionize the way we read time, it would be a big deal, right? So while there are different ways to read time, clockmakers, watchmakers have made new ways. You're arguing that it's ultimately just a reinterpretation of a classic analog clock.
Yeah, I have an idea. What if you have a watch that you basically set to your sleeping time, and then it just counts down? Let's stay with hours and minutes, and just basically have like these watches that are telling you what is it? Mori, the remember you will die in Latin. Memento mori.
I don't remember.
Anyhow,
memento mori. Yes,
means like you remember you will die. So that's like
yes.
Just be clear that live your life, because
carpe diem.
It will, exactly, because it will end for everybody of us. We all die, which is very depressing, but it is the way it is. That's life.
So you're saying it counts down to the time you have to go to bed?
Yes. So that's basically like your time you have left during the day. How much time you have left? Yes. And this is what, maybe that means that you can spend your time more wisely. You don't waste your time with things that you look back and think like, oh my God, I can't believe I wasted 2 hours doing this. But if you look at the time this way, saying like, okay, I only have 5 hours left of my day before I have to call it a day and go to bed. Mm-hmm. So what am I doing with my time, right? I think this could either put a lot of stress on you, or on the other, like, oh my God, I have to spend my time wisely. Or it really helps you prioritize and focus on things that are important. That could be an interesting way. Maybe I should design a watch like this.
Somebody should come up with this, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting ideas out there.
Swatch had. Do you remember Swatch? They came up with beats. They had their own time system, the Swiss beats, they called it.
No, I have no idea about this.
No, they had. That was a big thing at the time. I don't know if that's somewhere in the explanation. It was. I think it was dividing the not Swiss beats.
By the way, while you're talking about this, I do want to point
internet
out
time, they call it now, or dot beat time. That was a decimal time concept in 1998 that the Swatch Corporation created. Yeah,
this is always something difficult. Like, why don't we utilize decimals, right? Because I think saying it's 5.1, as opposed to whatever the equivalent would be, 506. It would make sense logically to do it that way. Yeah. That could be interesting. The other thing that I do want to say is one thing that generally children struggle with is the fact that the hour hand moves, right? The hour hand is not specifically at 5 o'clock, right? So if you want to read 507, for instance, right? The 07 is going to be correct, but the 5 is not on 5. It's slightly offset. And as you go around the clock, the 5 o'clock moves towards the 6. So there is a company that has made children's watches, the company whose name I have forgotten, obviously. They were sold for a while on the Hodinkee store. I don't know if they still are.
Is this Kara's watch brand? The one that...
Yes, what was it called?
I forgot.
Yeah, exactly.
The one of the former authors.
No, it wasn't Karas. No, sorry, it wasn't Hodinkee. It wasn't Hodinkee. It was someone else. Okay. It was on Jack and Barker, or whatever his name, Bark and Jack. Jack and Barker. Adrian Barker.
Barking Jack.
Yeah. Barking Jack, yes. Let me see if I can find it very quickly. The idea was that they broke up the time for the kids in in pie charts, essentially.
Right.
Each pie would have a different color. So one would be, let's say, blue, right? And once again, one is not just one. It's the entire pie between 1 and 2. So you make that one color so that the kid knows anything in here is 1 o'clock.
Right.
And they put the 1, instead of putting it at the index, they put it inside that pie chart so that the kid knows anything within this color is 1.
Okay.
Previously, let's say 12 was yellow. So anything between 12 and 1 is yellow. And then they know that this is, instead of putting the, at the top 12, put it inside this pie.
I see what...
And that is logical.
Yeah, that's logical. But it's also, explains sometimes the way of how some people, in the English-speaking world, German-speaking world, and all of the stuff when you say 6:30?
I still don't know what that means.
What
in the sense that 6:30, is it 6:30 or is it 6:30?
Exactly. And that's one of the things. It's like, I think in German, we would say 6:30 means it's 5:30, right? It's not yet.
That's what in Hungarian is the same.
It's a bit
this
less
is
than 6. It's half of 6, right?
Exactly, which is what we use in Hungary. But in UK, if I'm not mistaken, 6:30 is 6:30.
Yeah, exactly. Or depends.
Which makes zero sense.
Yeah. Well,
unless you said 6:30.
Always things like, exactly. But there's always
different.
You wouldn't
say 6:30, I guess, right? So the British would, in English, you don't say till 6.
That's also the thing. We have in different languages, you have different things like quarters, right? Quarter 6, 6:15, 6, right? And some languages have this, that it's easy to say, 25 to 6. And in English, it sounds completely contrived. You wouldn't say that to anybody, right? But in some other languages, it might be totally fine to say.
In German, you have the same thing, because in Hungarian, we say, and this is where things get really complex. Like, right, I say 3/4 till 6 is 5:15.
Yeah, that's also something confusing.
Why would we say this? Yeah. That is so complicated. But in Hungarian, we use this.
Yeah.
It makes zero sense.
And we have this 5:30 in German. 5:30, we say in German, 5:30. It's like 35, right? Or 5:35 to half, which is also completely like 25 would say 5 to half, which is completely weird, right? These kind of things. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyhow,
now we're once again off our.
So after we revolutionized the timekeeping. So by the way, the Swiss beats, I just figured that out. It was divided into 1,000. The 24 hours or the 3,600 minutes were divided into 1,000 beats. At midnight, they would go to 1,000 or 999 and then go back to 0. And then they start counting again. And they had this on their digital watches. They had a couple of these digital watches, which Swatch has done over the years in different formats. I think they have never really taken off that much with digital display watches in their quartz watches. But they had that Swiss Beats time, and they put it on internet websites, and they wanted to license it to everybody, but it didn't really take off much. So yeah, the Switch.
But this is one thing that this movie, The Keeper of Time, does go into, is the fact that they've tried, not just them, numerous people have tried to put time into a decimal format, to not just decimate it, but to also make the hours, instead of being 12 times 2 per day at 24 hours with 2 halves, you would try to make it 20 or 10, right? And then break it down into 10 hours of 100 minutes each. And this has all been tried. But the problem is we still can't get as accurate as we can with 12. And once again, it's 12 months, 12 hours.
I think the idea with the whole beats thing was basically to have this universal time. You don't have to convert time, because everybody's around the world uses the beats, right? Mm-hmm. For some people it resets at midnight, but the other people it resets at a different time. It doesn't matter, because you're just counting the beats. And interesting, ICQ. You remember ICQ, that chat software? They used that. No. ICQ was a ICQ, right? It's an I, a C, and a Q. ICQ basically was a chat program, internet chat program, like AOL chat and all of these old chat programs where you could live chat, like WhatsApp for your computer, basically, in the old times.
No, I used AIM. AIM was the AOL version, but I never used ICQ.
Was, I think, even older than that. And Fantasy Star Online, it was a role-playing game on the Dreamcast. They used these beats, which I just looked up, in order to allow cross-continent gaming. So when people from Japan played with people from Europe and from US, and everybody tried to agree on specific times, it was, a lot of calculation, right? Obviously, with the different time zones and all of this stuff. So they actually came up with this or adopted this Swiss Beats time, because then you have just one standard to look at. It's a nice idea. Didn't work.
Yeah, which there's been tons of these ideas and it didn't work.
They were not adopted. Yeah.
In separate from revolutionizing the way we tell time, how can a watch company come up with a new design of a watch? Hasn't every design been used by now?
Yeah,
what do you think?
It's a good question. Has not everything? I mean, look, again, when we are looking at watch nerds, when Rolex releases a new dial color, we go all like giddy and are excited, like this bubble dial that I've seen recently.
Yeah, which is
in
is
the
it
real
new?
world.
No.
Yeah, is that cool? Yeah, but is that revolutionary? Hardly. There's nothing new about it. In watch design itself, when Moser came out with these...
What about materials?
Yeah.
When Rolex says, okay, we have a Yachtmaster in titanium, and everybody goes, oh my goodness, that's so cool.
Yeah, if Rolex does it, it's cool. But titanium watches have been around for, I don't know how long.
For ages.
Decades. Nothing particularly new. I think materials, if they don't necessarily create new shapes, I don't think... I mean, is it Hublot has done a lot. Same as Rado has done a lot with ceramics.
I think having a sapphire case was cool, right? That was revolutionary to be able to see through the entire watch.
That's certainly something
that
new.
was big. That was new. And because until then, watches, once again, we had a crystal and we had a case. The case could be made out of carbon fiber, it could be made out of titanium, whatever you want. But ultimately, making that clear, fully clear, and the bracelet was clear. That was cool, and that was revolutionary, and it was Hublot.
Yeah, and I had a clear G-Shock. Remember these?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But at the time, then we can argue against Hublot and say Swatch did it as well.
Correct. They started with the jelly, right? The first ones.
Yeah, the Swatch jellies, exactly.
And back then, it was already for me a watch that I put on my wrist once, and then I decided this is not for me because I have a bit of wrist hair right on my arms, and if you
can see the hair underneath,
squashed hair on your through your watch band doesn't look particularly pleasing to me, right?
Really, I've never tried.
Yeah. Try a transparent watch band, plastic watch band, and look at your wrist hair then underneath it. It just doesn't look so nice. Also, when you have a transparent case back and a transparent front and a skeletonized movement, and you actually see your wrist through it, through your entire watch, if there's enough space. It looks great on photographs. It looks amazing when you handle the watch in your hand, right? I mean, if you don't wear it. But once you put it on your wrist and there's light shining through it, and you see your wrist hair squashed on your wrist, you think, that's not particularly
also,
nice.
You have to keep in mind the fact that I don't know, me at least, but I don't know about you, I have a ridiculous tan line from my watch. So I would be able to see the pale skin.
Yes, after coming back,
underneath.
I have this as well. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. You get to see this nice pale skin underneath your clear watch.
Yeah, so, isn't that nice? You have then a black hair on a very white skin. Oh, not so nice. Anyhow, so that's my thing there with sapphire and transparent stuff. But yeah, as you said, is everything a rehash of something that already existed? Is it a new color? Is it a new material? Does it really change things much? We could argue no, but we could also say over time that does change things. If you look at bicycles or cars or whatever it is, when new materials got introduced into that, I mean, you're cycling, right? You're a cycler.
Yeah. When carbon fiber came in.
Yeah, exactly. And now, I mean, you lift up a whole bicycle with a finger and you think like, wow, that used to be many kilos,
but it gets better than that, because it was originally, this was the thing is we had steel frames.
Yes.
And when we went from steel to aluminum.
Yeah, I remember that.
Not much changed. The composition, the look of the bike stayed the same, because ultimately it was still a metal tube and you still had physical limitations of
you needed the rigidity.
And,
exactly. Yeah.
The rigidity had to remain. When we went to carbon fiber, then at that point you can make the bike whatever shape you want to, because you're not limited by the tube itself, right? So we started seeing squares. We started seeing huge down tubes that were extremely fat, but extremely thin at the same time. So they're basically aerodynamics became a thing, which was never a thing before carbon fiber.
True.
And now they're starting to realize that weight is not the enemy; it's aerodynamics. So it's much better when you look at a pro bike nowadays. We still have this UCI, which is the governing body of cycling. They say 6.8 kilos is the minimum weight for a bike. The reason we have a minimum weight is because people were sacrificing safety for the sake of lightness, right? They were cutting off pieces of the frame that if it snapped in half, it would be extremely dangerous, right? So, but now with carbon fiber, we don't have this issue anymore. We're actually going up in weight. So you're seeing bikes that are 7.5 kilos, 8 kilos even. But the thing is, they're extremely aerodynamic. So they're repurposing weight for the sake of.
But I guess once it moves, right? I mean, that's the challenge, right? You have to get it moving. But once it moves, you have your momentum, at least on a straight line. If it goes uphill, then of course weight might be an issue. But downhill, it helps you.
This is why they have climbing bikes as well. But anyway, all right.
But anyhow, my point is,
materials. Designs are still.
Has that revolutionized cycling?
No. And essentially, if you look at a bicycle from 150 years ago and you look at a bicycle from today, you still look at both and say it's a bicycle.
Yes, exactly. And I think watches
at the same time, you look at a watch and it's still a watch.
Yeah. Unless I think when it's such extraordinary.
Which is very common because once again, I'm wearing the first men's wristwatch in the world, right?
Right.
The Cartier Santos was the first male wristwatch.
Pilot's watch.
And if we look at wristwatch as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was the first pilot's watch and the first wristwatch for men. Because before they had women's wristwatches. But men didn't have any watches that they could wear on their wrist.
They had this in the wars, right? So pilot's watch.
This was 1904.
Yeah. Didn't
so
they
it was
have before? No, maybe not. Okay.
So before it was pocket watches. So the first war where watches became a thing was World War I.
So a proper man would wear a pocket watch in the vest pocket.
Exactly. A proper man would, only women would wear wristwatches.
Yes, such a female thing to do.
Going from this, you take a look at this and you take a look at what the most advanced, what the most craziest complicated watch is today. And ultimately, they're both still watches, right? You can still tell that they're watches. When we look at a car, you look at the first Mercedes, with Daimler or Mercedes or whoever made it, 4 wheels, steering wheel. Essentially, it looks, you can kind of decipher that this is, but actually I would say less so.
It looks, sometimes it looks a bit more like a horse cart without a horse because that's what it was, right? But it's,
But the watch... the watch has changed less than the car. If you look at computing, that has changed an extraordinary amount. I don't think you can look at a computer from 50, 60 years ago and say that's a computer, right? You would have no idea what it is.
That's true.
When you look at laptops or whatever today. So if we look at these 3 industries, obviously computing has changed the most. Yeah. Cars have changed second, but watches have changed the least.
Yeah, and isn't that nice? I think isn't that why we still like watches? Because it's such a bit of it's like a crocodile of technology, right? It hasn't evolved in millions of years because it's pretty much perfect in the way it does its function.
It does what it does.
Yeah, we don't need it anymore, right? I mean, we don't need watches or wristwatches. We have the time, and there's so many devices that tells us the time, computers, mobile phones, and everything else. But we still like it, and we still even like specifically the mechanical watches that have this little mechanisms ticking away that you have to even care for. You have to move or you have to wind them. I think they have this romanticism in it that we have this little thing under control. It dies when I'm not taken care of. There's a personal connection to it. It's a very nice thing to something mechanical. And now, especially now in our technical world, everything becomes less mechanical. Even cars, right? Electric cars there's no pistons going up and down. There's no combustion happening. You don't have to fill petrol in it.
A Tesla is essentially a computer.
There's no oil,
with
really.
Wheels.
All of this dirty, greasy stuff that we consider with engines and mechanical stuff, like the old steam engines and all of these things. And now everything being electric, it's more clinical, it's more clean. It has removed a bit of that rawness to it, right? I think. And I think this is a bit
exactly
bad that we go back to these little things. That's why we still like wristwatches so much. And I appreciate people who can build them, because that's in itself artistic. I always thought if you put the best engineers and designers on it, of creating, let's say, a watch movement, not watchmakers. And I'm not saying that watchmakers are not good engineers, but there are engineers that are brilliant minds. They're working on whatever, nuclear fusion and space exploration and other incredible things, biology, chemistry, and so on. If these people would all come together and say, let's design a watch movement, a mechanical watch movement that's the best it can possibly be from all fields of science, I would be very surprised what comes out of it.
Yeah.
If people completely from outside the watch world would start thinking about this, maybe there could be a completely different way of how it works mechanically, right?
Well,
or
we've seen a few of these.
displace
I mean,
things.
there's a few watches that do something strange like this. For instance, there's the perpetual calendar watch that shows dots. I don't remember who made it, but it was a very simple perpetual calendar. It had a disc, a rotating disc, and there was always a red dot showing which month it is out of 12 holes, which day of the week it is out of 5 or 7 holes, and so forth. And, once again, we don't really
Nomos,
need to know.
Right? Or maybe I'm wrong.
No, it wasn't Nomos. It was somebody similar to Nomos, but it wasn't Nomos themselves. It was some micro brand, but I think it was a German micro brand.
Oh, yeah.
But the point of the story is, ultimately, in this case, they were saying it doesn't matter what day of the week, your week starts. It could be a Sunday, it could be a Monday. You can start your week whenever you want to, because it didn't write anything on the dial. So essentially, it was kind of cool in that sense that I can say, okay, well, this is arbitrarily a Wednesday, and it's just whatever you want it to be, right? Which is kind of cool. And then this takes me into the new Rolex day date that has the emojis for the dates.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
You don't care what day it is. It is whatever you want it to be. And that is kind of ultimately cool.
Yes,
right?
weekdays are
I
societal constructs that have nothing to do with reality. We shouldn't follow them.
Exactly.
I stopped working.
And I think on the day window as well, they just tell you something, right? Happiness or whatever. Today is happiness smiley emoji, right? And who cares ultimately?
Yeah, because I think that what Rolex did with that is a bit making fun of the watch itself, or the what it actually shows. Because the date window now is useless, right? As showing the date, it's showing something else, which is fine, which is nice. I like the idea, but it also shows. Listen, we don't actually make these watches anymore to tell the time or the date or whatever. It's wrist jewelry. And here, that's one of the manifestations of it, saying like, well, we use the date disc to do some fun stuff. There you go.
And that's exactly going back to what you said with Moser. That's what Moser did with the Swiss Alp, with the Swiss Alp minute repeater.
Yeah. It's like
no hands, no nothing. You can listen to it.
But it still has a way of communicating the time.
Yeah,
it's like when you had these older watches for blind people or for visually impaired people, where you could actually lift the glass and then you could touch the hands with your fingertip. Mm-hmm. They were quite robust, obviously.
Never seen this.
Yeah, and then you had, of course, watches that would tell the time like a minute repeater, or
verbally, or
the quartz watches that would just you press a button and it says it's 6:05, right? And then these kind of things for people who can't, tell the time with their eyes. I think there's other ways. It could be tapping, it could be vibration, it could be all of these little things. But is that any cooler, smarter, quicker? Who knows? Do we really need to know?
Who cares, right? Ultimately.
But so, we still like to strap these things on our wrist.
Yeah, we still like them. So wrapping up, once again, there is very, very minimal new design in the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah.
We see things like, okay, in the 1950s, people used to wear 33 millimeter watches, and now we're wearing 42 millimeter watches. okay, watches got bigger, but ultimately it's still a watch.
Yes.
And we can go all the way back to the beginning and it's still a watch. And that is kind of what, we hasn't had any new designs or change. So all said and done, watches have apparently not changed since the very beginning.
Yeah, and we're still waiting for
since the beginning of watches. We have to say this, since the beginning of watches.
Yeah.
Because if we go back to clocks, that's an entirely different story, right? With, as you were talking about, sundials, there has been change since then.
Yeah, and also precision of watches in general, right? I mean, that has changed to a certain extent.
And that's still something we're fighting to make even better, right? With Grand Seiko doing spring drive and their high frequency quartz and things like this, there is still push being made towards accuracy. So that's
Citizen with the Chronomaster
way we can move.
which is a Japanese domestic market. I mean, that's now internationally available, but they have movements that are solar powered 1 second, plus minus 1 second a year, autonomous. They're not correcting time via any external time signal. They have an intrinsic precision of plus minus 1 second a year if you wear the watch 8 hours a day because of temperature variances and all of this stuff. But that's just insane. Imagine wearing this watch for 10 years and it would be maximum 10 seconds off, most likely less.
Yeah,
a maximum of 10 seconds. And that is just, and they created that kind of mechanism that.
And this goes back to the conversation we had earlier about intrinsic or internal accuracy versus external accuracy, right?
Correct.
You mentioned using an atomic time or something else to accurate, make it more accurate.
Like our phones, right? I mean, they get corrected by the internet.
They're not keeping time. Exactly.
A couple of times a day, right? So, yeah. So, yeah, it's all
that's
rubbish.
The end of it. It's all rubbish, as your good friend said. Yes, it's all rubbish. Everything's rubbish.
It's all rubbish.
But anyway, all right.
We love it.
Once again,
we were still waiting for the
hour of tangents.
Yeah, we still wait for the revolution in wristwatches, right? So if there's the next person who's saying they're revolutionizing the wristwatch, we will be watching very closely.
Yes, we'll be watching and seeing what you make. And it better not be a new dial color.
Exactly. All righty.
So, all right. Once again, follow us on at Lume Plotters on Instagram. We're on YouTube at Lume Plotters as well. So check us out and see you next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you.